Welcome back to the Camino Cafe. I'm Lee Brennan, and I'm here with co-founder Corey Kratz, and we're also joined with Father Stephen again. And if you just watched our last video, I know that you probably are eager to hear more from him. And on this particular interview, we want to talk more about the service project that he started, Warriors on the Way. And I think that you will find what he's doing just incredible right now, an incredible gift of service to so many men and women who have served our country. So, Father Stephen, I thought maybe we should start first with if you could tell us a little bit about how this whole service project was born. It sounded like maybe you were thinking about it prior maybe to your Camino, but it definitely sounded like the experience that you had at Cruz de Ferro definitely paved the way to it really getting off the ground. So if you could just maybe tell us about how it was born and then give us just a brief explanation as to what it is if people aren't familiar with the program already.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate being on again. Well, I did not anticipate doing anything with along these lines until I went on the Camino myself. And honestly, I thought the Camino was kind of going to be a one and done, right? Go have the experience and be finished. Uh, Little did I realize the addiction value of the Camino. But so as you mentioned, and we talked about just briefly, kind of hinted at in the last interview, this was really born. Warriors on the Way was really born at the Cruz de Ferro on my personal Camino when upon my retirement from the Army. It was an incredibly transformative experience. And as I walked away from the Cruz de Ferro, I realized it's like I got to figure out a way to bring other pilgrims on the Camino, or other veterans, other combat veterans on the Camino, so that they can experience, or at least have the opportunity to experience this healing experience that I've had. And so that just kind of went in the back of my mind. I've got not quite 2 weeks left on my own walk at that point. And it's just kind of sitting there percolating in or back burner, whichever uh, analogy you want to use. Uh, well, what would it look like if I did this? Well, what would we need to do? Well, what would be the logistics? All of these different questions. And while I'm walking, I just keep suppressing all those questions. Like, I don't know. I just know it has to be done. And I finish, get done. Had a wonderful experience the last portion of the Camino. Met, as discussed earlier in the previous interview, had been walking with a German university student for a few days, ended up meeting a couple more along the way. So I've got these 3 German university students, which, they're university students. They're young and the world is their oyster, right? So so there's this great youthful exuberance kind of fueling the whole thing. And all along I'm thinking, how am I going to bring other veterans out here? And so I get home, sit down, and I just start sketching it out. Now, the last thing I did in the Army before retiring was I developed the Army Chaplain Corps' curriculum on how to provide a ministerial response to moral injury and PTSD. They're closely interrelated. They're not identical, but they have a lot of overlap. And so in the researching and the writing and the teaching of that course gave me a good background of, okay, if I'm going to bring veterans out here specifically for healing, what does it need to include? And so I already had a good foundation of knowledge. So, well, it has to include this, and it has to include this, and it has to include this. Simple things like going outside will reduce your symptoms. Exercising will reduce your symptoms. Well, the Camino is exercising outside, right? Uh, Being with a group of people who have had the same or a similar experience in bonding with those other people will reduce your symptoms. Okay, well, I'm going to bring a group of only combat veterans. So that's handled there. the reality that positive spiritual practices will according to Dr. Andrew Newberg, who's a neuroscientist who wrote a great book called How God Changes Your Brain, all through doing cat and pet scans, literally watch the plasticity of the brain change as people engaged in meditation, engaged in prayer, other spiritual practices, and has it all documented with incredible peer-reviewed research. So positive spiritual practices, well, that's what I'm all about. You know, I'm a priest, that's what I'm all about. So we put all of this in combination and start designing, this is the way the day would look. And then realize, like, well, moral injury and PTSD do overlap, but they're not the same. Moral injury is an emotional response. PTSD is an emotional response, but it's from a completely different direction. One is really guilt-based, one is fear-based. The guilt-based is easy for faith to deal with. The fear response is a totally different thing. And so the spiritual concept of forgiveness and grace and mercy, that's right up my alley. Responding to fear, I mean, I can touch on it, but that's really not my piece. But when I was in the Army, I had this excellent colleague by the name of Lisa Landry, Dr. Lisa Landry, clinical psychologist, who is all about the PTSD piece. And so I contacted her and was like, you want to team up on this program? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's work together on this. And so we came together, we started looking at, you know, what do we need to include? What do we need to do? She had the PTSD side, I had the moral injury side. And we start every pilgrimage, day one. Okay, we are working together. Faith and behavioral health are not enemies. A lot of people misunderstand that. And unfortunately, a lot of people in behavioral health and a lot of people in the faith community, they're part of the problem. They don't know how to cooperate with each other, which I just consider that to be tragic, because you're missing so many opportunities. So we know each other, we understand each other, we work just hand in glove with each other, bringing faith and behavioral health to bear on every pilgrim's concerns. If it's more appropriately addressed with behavioral health, Dr. Landry takes over. If it's more appropriately addressed through the coming to a better understanding of the spiritual world and faith, then I take the lead. But we work just absolutely side by side to make sure that each pilgrim gets exactly what he or she needs. So we built that in, and we got it all designed, and then said, oh, wait a minute, how are we going to pay for it? And like, well, what if the pilgrims pay for themselves? Well, that's okay, but it means a lot of people who need a healing opportunity won't have that opportunity. Well, that means if we want people to go without those people don't necessarily have the ability to pay, then we need sponsors. We need people who are willing to donate. And there's a good number of people, and especially the first year while we were trying to get it all figured out, people who just believed in the program, said, here's the money, go do what you do. But the reality is most people being recognized as a 501c3, that is, you know, that is your proof of validity, that you're not some fly-by-night organization. And so we got some guidance from some nonprofit advisors. How do you establish a 501c3? What do you do? Went through that process and did in fact get approved as a 501c3 by the IRS, so that people can have an assurance of our legitimacy, and then give the bonus that when they donate to us, that they'll receive the tax advantage come tax time. That took just a little bit over a year to get it designed, what we want to do, how we're going to run it, get the 501c3 approved and recognized. We started taking applications prior to being a 501c3, and we were just, operating with faith that it was going to work. And so we got a group of pilgrims together. We selected the team. Team selection for the pilgrimage is a multifaceted thing, because we have to, we want to prioritize people who have a clear understanding what their need is and what they're seeking out of the experience. And at the same time, we want the team to come together as a team. And so it's part, what is your need? And part is, are we going to put the right people together to gel and have an effective team going on the trip?
Right.
So we got our people together, we got the donations, we were ready to execute. We actually left our first year, September of 2018. We actually left slightly in the red. Actually, we left a lot in the red. and I was like, we got the plane tickets bought, people are inbound, we're going to execute. We're going to, we'll just, it was one of those God will provide type things. And if not, well, my credit card will provide, I guess. I don't know.
One way or another, the computer provides.
That's right. That's right. Very true. And so we got there and we started, and Facebook is ubiquitous. So I had done 2 weeks of postings scheduled to be released each day. This is where we are today, with a little picture and a map and whatever else. And if you want to help us out, click here. And by the time we got home, enough money had come in to cover our shortfall. So it was beautiful. It was brilliant.
I love seeing.
That's how we got started.
Yeah, I love seeing how you had so much faith that even as you were finishing up your Camino, knowing that there were so many details to work out, more than I can even imagine. And so I'm just hearing you talk about all the logistics alone, but your whole attitude about it of, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And I think that's such a admirable quality that you're showing with this. I also really love hearing you talk about how you're treating the veterans in a whole being sort of way, looking at treating them from a spiritual to a physical way is just very impressive, that you're looking at the whole individual and not just one part or piece of what they've experienced.
Right.
I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, since you started back, you said in 2018, how many warriors have been able to benefit from the program?
Oh, let's see. Okay, so the first year was a group of 7. And then the following year, I'd have to double check. I think the following year was a group of 10. And then, of course, the next year was 2020. We've had a logistical cap of 12. When you get past 12, it starts to get unwieldy. You get it's an interesting thing when you're dealing with people's emotions, right? Everybody who signs up for our program realizes that they're dealing with something, and you have to put them in an environment that fosters them being willing to do that. Mm-hmm. And so if you're too small, it feels like you're in a fishbowl and all eyes on you. If you're too big, it is too easy to simply slip into the background and not actually engage what you're there for. Right. And so we have an intentional cap at 12 people per pilgrimage. It is our goal to grow to multiple iterations per year in order to expand the program. We cannot effectively expand the program by adding people per iteration, because it becomes counterproductive. So the growth will be by multiple iterations per year. But yeah, most definitely, it is a holistic approach. That is definitely one of the areas where those from a more Eastern tradition have a better understanding of our humanity than those in the Western tradition. Uh, you know, Descartes may have done incredible things for the advancement of philosophy, but he did a terrible thing for our soul in isolating us to our thoughts rather than our entirety of our being.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love how you have taken, the Camino can be viewed as transformational travel. And I think that you have taken it to a great level with the warriors that you've taken by incorporating so much more into it. And it's just an amazing program. How many people right now are on your list to go the next time that we're able to go?
We currently have 12 people on the list, which is our cap. And we've got another 10 people on the waiting list for anybody that needs to drop out for any reason. So, I mean, if we could execute today, I could do 2 iterations and be in, I could do 2 iterations of 11 people and it would be amazing.
Right. Yeah.
So if we had a warrior that was listening right now, or maybe someone that is considering sponsoring a warrior, could you share with us, I know that you can't go into a lot of detail about anyone's specific transformation, but could you give us an idea of maybe something that you've witnessed that keeps you motivated to keep the program going?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few different stories I like to tell, and I'm going to highlight 2 of them. One of them is a person who had been a Navy corpsman, and for those that don't know, the Marine Corps doesn't have their own medics, their own corpsmen. They rely on the Navy to supply their medical personnel. And when somebody in the Navy is supporting the Marine Corps, they refer to that as being on the green side. There's blue side, the Navy, and the green side, the Marine Corps. And so this individual was a Navy corpsman, but was on the green side. He was supporting infantry Marines in theater. And great corpsman, incredible medical skills. And it's one of those weird double-edged swords. A person who's whether you're in the Air Force or the Army and you're referring to the person as a medic, the Navy and the Marine Corps, and you're referring to the person as a corpsman, those that support infantry soldiers on the ground, they cannot help but become incredible medical personnel because of the demand. I mean, the reality is they're saving lives. And so this individual never lost a Marine in combat, treated lots and lots of wounded Marines and never lost a single one. Saved a lot of lives. But there was a one particular day when bad guys ambushed our guys, and I will not say that it's universal across the Middle East, but at least among those that are referred to as anti-government forces, anti-coalition forces, basically they're terrorists. I mean, there's no way around it. They're terrorists. There's very little regard for human life. Mm-hmm. And so we follow incredibly challenging rules of engagement in order to ensure the safety of the local national population.
Right.
The bad guys don't do that, because the more terror you can introduce to the circumstance, the more you can force compliance out of the local population. And there happened to be a bunch of young children in between the bad guys and our guys, and the bad guys launched their ambush, and the Marines were fine, but the little kids were killed. Mm-hmm. And so this corpsman did everything that he could, and he saved a lot of these kids' lives, but not all of them. And some of those kids died. And he just, in a year in combat, saving untold number of lives, including a lot of the kids that day, the fact that a few of those kids died just weighed on him. I mean, it was an emotional weight, but it acted like a physical weight. It just weighed him down. And that's what he brought to the Cruz de Ferro. That reality is what he brought to the Cruz de Ferro. And the next day after our day at the cruise, you could see the change in his demeanor, in his total facial affect, and how he interacted with other people. That was the taking of that emotional weight off of his shoulders and leaving it behind. So just absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. The next story is not quite as dramatic, but I think equally important. And that was a senior leader that we had. And he had a extremely successful career in the military, achieved really he was at the very top of his field as far as his achievement. And he came really motivated. His motivation was clearly challenged. Right about the midway point, started visibly being discouraged. You could tell that something wasn't quite right, and remained that way pretty much all the way to Santiago. And we get there, and we're in the cathedral, and we're waiting for the pilgrim mass. We're waiting to see the Botafumeiro swing. The motivation of at least 3/4 of the people who are there, more so than the mass, unfortunately. But reality is what it is.
Right.
But we're sitting in the pew next to each other, and he leans over and he said, "I came here expecting this huge voice from God. This is what you're supposed to do next. This will solve your problem." Now, when I said he started getting discouraged, he was a lot like I was on my first trip, just undertrained. He had achieved that level of success in the military. And when you're at the top, people really don't challenge your physical fitness. I mean, it's just a reality, right?
Yeah.
You're given a lot of assumption. Of course, he's fine. He's at the top. And so he wasn't quite ready to handle the daily walking to the pace that was required, and he struggled. And so we get there, and he goes, "I expected this great big booming voice, okay, this is what you need to do, direct voice from God." And instead, I was embarrassed, and I struggled. And so I replied back, and I replied to him by his at this point, he's been retired, but not for very long, recent retirement. So I addressed him by his rank. It's like, well, and I addressed him by his rank to express the point that I know that you're at the top of your field. Did you get what you wanted, or did you get what you needed? Because day one, I say the Camino won't necessarily give you what you want, but it will give you what you need. And he kind of, a little bit of a bristle, not too much, but a little bit of like and he says, "I got what I needed, but I wanted what I wanted." And so we talked about that for a while, and that like finally admitting that I got what I needed, and what I needed isn't what I thought that I wanted. That was his transformation. And now he's like, he's the biggest Camino fan in the world. We remain in touch. I remain in touch with all of our what I now refer to as our Pilgrim alumni. I remain in touch with everyone, and there's always, every conversation we'll talk about what's going on in life and everything else, but somewhere in that conversation the Camino will come up, and because it took getting to that point of saying I got what I actually needed more than what I wanted, that made the life transformation that has modified his outlook on how he lives.
Yeah. I was thinking that exact quote as you were telling that story. The day before I started my Camino, I had met a German pilgrim, and we talked for a bit, and he was talking to a group of us, and we finished the conversation. And right before he walked away, or as he was walking away, he turned back and looked at us and he said, "There's one thing that you all need to remember, is that the Camino will not give you what you want, it will give you what you need." And I had no idea what he meant at that point, but I think when we start on Camino, we start with the ego drivenness, right? If we're familiar with hearing everyone's stories and what we think is going to happen during a pilgrimage, we think we're going to go and we're going to ask for what it is that we want. But the Camino has a way of working through us, doesn't it? And it really gives us what we need. And it may not at all be what we thought it was, but by the end, or at some point, we begin to see that. I'm very touched by your stories, Father Stephen, hearing about the first warrior that you mentioned, and knowing the transformation that all pilgrims go through. It's very touching to hear the depth of the transformation that person was able to process and be able to really leave that burden behind. I can't imagine the pain of carrying that type of burden that they were carrying. So what a beautiful story to hear that healing that occurred at Cruz de Ferro for that warrior. It's just amazing. I was pretty much feeling very choked up as you shared that. And I can't imagine what an honor it is to be able to witness that in person. And I just want to encourage everyone that's listening to this interview, if you could maybe just share with everyone that if they wanted to make a donation to help sponsor someone that might have the opportunity to drop a burden like that. I know we all walk with our burdens and we all have a cross to carry, as you say. But particularly hearing that story, I know that many people will be touched like I am. And if you could just share with us, how would we go about making a donation to your program to help others benefit from what we've maybe benefited from if we've gone?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Well, first off, I'll say that we, as an organization, we cover all the pilgrim's expenses from departure of the United States, getting to Spain, ground transportation to our start point. We provide the backpacks, the sleeping bag, the trekking poles, the canteen. All the pilgrim has to show up with is the clothes they're going to hike in and a decent pair of hiking shoes, hiking boots, as their personal footwear preference dictates.
That's amazing.
And so our operating cost, including all of that, is about $3,750 per pilgrim. Now, clearly that fluctuates a little bit based on the airfare from one year to the next and the rate of exchange, sure. But that's our operating cost per pilgrim. The way to support the program is we've got multiple ways to donate. If you go to warriorsontheway.org, warriorsontheway.org, real simple. One of the tabs across the top is support us, and that gives a variety of choices. You can do a PayPal donation. You can do a direct credit. If you don't like PayPal for whatever reason, you can do a direct credit card donation. There's the address for those that still like mailing checks. Not a lot of people, but there are a good number that do prefer paper checks. And even the kind of stereotypical charity, donate your vehicle, click here, we'll come and pick it up and give you your donation receipt. That's coordinated through a national effort that supports us. So if any of those ways fits within the donor, then that works well. One thing that I've learned in this last couple of years, for those that have do this, is there's a couple different financial planning organizations that will allow you to like create your own foundation, and you donate money into it. And then when you want it distributed, you just tell them where you want it sent.
Mhm.
And so I will occasionally get either emails or phone calls asking what our IRS number is, for the sake of coordinating those type of donations. And so we do that as well. Just the email address is on the website. Just reach out, let us know, and we'll give you all the information to pass along to whichever financial planning organization has set up your charitable giving.
Okay. And I know that you have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, also the same title pretty much, right?
Yeah, there's one, I think it's Twitter that actually has a different title, because Warriors on the Way was actually taken by somebody who then let it go dormant. Personal annoyance of mine, but that's okay. uh, but yes, Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter page, all of those links exactly to how to follow us can be found from our website. They're all the different social media buttons are across the bottom of warriorsontheway.org. Clearly, they kind of flare up when we're actually on pilgrimages. You'll get daily updates, daily pictures, so on and so forth. Throughout the rest of the year, it's just kind of a note here or there to keep it active and remind people that we haven't gone away. So if you do follow us, it won't overwhelm your phone or your inbox or whatever else, except for those few weeks each year that we're on pilgrimage. And then you should like what you're receiving, because you'll be looking at pilgrims getting their lives changed every day.
Yeah, I think it would be a pleasure to watch one of your trips.
Yeah.
Corey, do you have any other questions that you wanted to ask before we close?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for all that you're doing. I think it's amazing. And, it's the least that we can do for those that serve our country. And it's been something that I've been really passionate for or about for a long time. I've had family serve and have, a couple of them have either been injured or, have come home really having a rough time trying to feel okay and back to normal and all of those things from the things that are witnessed and seen. And I just feel like I'm just so grateful that you're doing what you're doing, because I really feel like this really helps, and it's the least that any of us can do, for those that serve our country. So thank you so much, truly.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And let me just touch on that, as far as expressing the need in general. And we talked about how to provide support, and appreciate that, and we definitely need it in order to make this happen. But I don't want someone who may have been listening, who heard like this, we've already got a list of 12 plus a waiting list of 10 more, from being discouraged from applying. So if you know somebody, or you happen to be watching personally out there anywhere online, and it says, this sounds like the program for me, but they've already got too many people, send in a request for an application. It is a multi-step process. It's a multi-step, we've learned through experience of a need to kind of slowly bring people through the application process to ensure that people understanding what they're getting themselves into. So, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, and you think this is something that would work for you, send in a request for an application. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get a form letter reply before you actually ask for an application. Understand that this is what you're asking for, and kind of describe the program. And then, get the application process to start. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got our 12 people and we've got a waiting list, but the waiting list isn't first come, first serve. Because as I mentioned earlier, we're picking people based on how the best team is going to get formed. That might be number 1 on the waiting list. It might be number 8 on the waiting list. Or if we get another application tomorrow, it might be number 11 or 12 or 13 on the waiting list. So if you have an interest, you think this is right for you, if you think this is right for a friend, a family member, a colleague, encourage them to send us the request for information so that we can start the process for them. Whether it happens this year, which we all realize that COVID is continuing longer than anyone was expecting or anticipating. Whether it happens this year, whether it happens next year, it does get the process started. You do get brought into the Warriors on the Way community so that we talk about some of the things that we intend to do. And just that, we've got Zoom meetings between our pilgrims to talk about, hey, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And it just kind of takes those first steps on the Camino virtually rather than physically. And that, like I said, it gets people started.
Good.
That's really great, Stephen. I think, just encouraging anyone out there that is considering signing up for the program to remember that the Camino provides. And when we feel that call to go on Camino, I really believe in my heart it will happen at some point, at some time. It's just a matter of all the details getting worked out. And I just also want to encourage everyone that has gone, that knows what the Camino has done for them. Imagine how gratifying it would feel to know that you have played a small part in providing a transformation for someone that has served our country. I just think that could only add to the magic of our own individual Caminos and give it even more meaning than what it already has for us. So thank you so much for spending this time with us today and telling us more about your program. And I'm so excited to watch the journey that your next group takes. I'm so excited to have met you and to now have this opportunity to watch and see what all you do. I think what you've created in your, I guess, retirement, it doesn't sound much like a retirement.
Well, the brilliant thing about retirement is that you're still doing a full day of everything, but you're actually picking what you want to do.
Yeah. We're actually reading a book in our Camino book club right now, written by David White, and it's all about work being really a journey of pilgrimage. And I think what you're doing exemplifies what he talks about, that I think you found your pilgrimage of work, another whole version of it, because all of your work sounds like it's been a pilgrimage, but particularly this one being on the Camino, it gives me chills to just even think about what you've done. And I wish you great success and can't wait to see what your next Warriors do.
Oh, thank you so much. And if I can just add one more thing, you mentioned other supporters. I will occasionally get a person who says, oh, I really wish I could support you, right? They got this mindset that the support that they have to give is something really significant. And I mentioned earlier, our per pilgrim cost is about $37.50. But what people don't realize is the vast majority of our donations come in the $20 to $50 range.
Okay, good.
Now, it takes a lot of donations to raise $45,000, $20.50 at a time. But the reality is, it's like, if you think to yourself, oh, I really wish I could sponsor a pilgrim. Like, well, maybe you can't sponsor a pilgrim, but you can sponsor one of the coffee breaks. That's a big deal. It really is a big deal. As anyone who's been on the Camino goes, once you're there, a couple dollars goes a long way, right?
Absolutely.
And so the idea that it's like, this is a rest stop, and everything that we do is intentional. So whether you look at, I can sponsor a pilgrim, I can sponsor a coffee break, I can sponsor one pilgrim's coffee break, everything that comes in is put directly into the pilgrimage. Everybody brings their talents to the program as a gift to the program. So everything we bring in goes to the pilgrimage.
Hmm.
So whether it's a small little bit or whether it's a huge donation or anywhere in between, it will change a life.
No, I love that. I love that, Father Stephen. Just knowing that we have the ability to sponsor a coffee break, to sponsoring a backpack, to sponsoring a flight, who knows what we can each individually give, but knowing that there's many different ways, many different levels at which we could sponsor and still be a part of somebody's transformation. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're welcome back anytime to the Camino Cafe. We definitely want to hear more stories from you. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being on.
Buen Camino.
Thank
Buen
you again.
Camino.